People with home security cameras. What's the creepiest thing you've ever seen happen while you were asleep? A couple who would drive by at random hours of the day for a full week would walk up to the house and look at my dogs, pit bulls, look into each window in the front, and even check the back gate fence. The camera was older and had no notifications, so the only way we knew was the moment they decided to open up the door while I was homesick and were subsequently rushed by my dogs. I heard the commotion and grabbed the only weapon I had, a bat, to find the front door open and what looked like a murder scene in my living room. All over the floor, the front door, the little entranceway, the window in red liquid. It turns out I have two very good bois, and the idiots went to the hospital to eventually be caught by police. They were going to take my dogs to be in dog fights, involved in a bunch of other seedy things, substances. Story 2, I wake up at 6 a.m. and just go through my security camera before heading to work. One day while looking through, I just saw my dog staring directly at my room. Skimmed through the different timelines. He did that for 30 minutes. I'm not sure why. Story 3, I installed some security cameras after some altercations with a horrible neighbor. Most I'd see was a squirrel, maybe a raccoon or two. Saw a fox once, that was cool. One night, I saw a guy walking up and down the street, passing my house over and over again. He seemed to limp more and more with each pass before he collapsed. Later, I found out that guy was on a massive substances trip, and he passed there, on the sidewalk in front of my house. There was blood on that patch for weeks. Turns out, he'd hit his then-girlfriend at the time whilst tripping out. Story 4, when I was a poor college student, my wealthy cousin and his wife went on vacation and offered to let me house sit to give me a break from my 3 slovenly roommates. They live a few towns over in a very nice house, with a huge front lawn and a fancy tall iron fence and double gates. The fence and gates are about 11 feet high. You have to have a remote to open the gates. That first night I slept so well. I breakfasted like a king and then drove to school. I got back around 5, made a supper fit for a king, and settled down to write an econ paper. My cousin has a warning system for when someone drives, turns off the road, and comes up to the gate. There's a chiming sound, and you can look at screens in a couple of different rooms to see who it is so that you can buzz them in. I was deep into my paper when I heard the chime. I was confused at first and checked my phone before I realized what it was. I looked from the sofa and could see a movement on the security screen. I stood up and got closer and had a clear view of 2 women getting out of a white car. One tried to squeeze between 2 bars of the gate. Impossible. And then the other woman tried to boost her over the top of the gate. Hilarious. The top one fell, and even from the house, I could heard swearing. I was about to press the intercom button and ask WTF was their problem, but I was chuckling at their antics and so just watched silently. They peered at the house intently from between the bars like a couple of jailbirds for a while. The skinnier one actually stripped down to her bra and panties and tried to squeeze through the bars again. No dice. Butt and boobs were not allowing that to happen. More swearing. Then, as the skinny one got dressed again, the bigger one went back to her trunk and got out a ducking tire iron. As soon as she started ducking with the hinges of the gate, I was on 911. The cops took too long and the women left. I showed the cops the video, but they couldn't get a license plate number. When my cousin and his wife returned the next week, I told them what happened, and we watched the tape. He said that he had no idea who the women were, but his wife looked pissed. I packed up, thanked them for my vacation, and left. She divorced him that summer. Story 5. I saw someone break into my car, take my sweater out of the front seat, stood there, and smelled it for a solid 5-10 minutes, then put it back and left. I gave that sweater away that day. Story 6. So I'm sitting in my living room at night, just recently moved into my new flat. I'm in a basement flat, own entrance, in a little townhouse on the edge of town. Quiet area, lots of trees, cheap rent, and no public transport or cell reception. I'm living alone for the first time. I just set up the security cameras and hooked them up to a new monitor. The old one was ancient and gigantic. Hadn't figured out where to put the monitor. I'd never had a security system before. It was, at the time, on my work desk, which was at the living room window. I noticed this slight yellow glow out the window, out the corner of my eyes, slowly getting brighter. As it does, I notice on the camera that there's a huge ass shadow cast across my door, visible from camera, to the left of the window, that looks kinda animal but weird proportions. I quietly crap myself. It sits there for a while, like a good 10 minutes, moving just enough to make me wonder if I'm imagining it moving. There's a kind of whining, buzzing noise, but it's faint, and I might be imagining it. I suddenly find religion. Then, all of a sudden, there's a loud pop from inside my building. The glow goes instantly away. There's a sound like a really pissed cat, and then really rapid footsteps. I'm in full cardiac arrest at this point, bathing in my own urine, crying for my mom. Flash forward a week or so. I haven't been eaten by a cat shadow monster, though I do have a sudden new interest in exorcism. I meet the upstairs neighbors, older couple, when they're having trouble getting a large package up the stairs. They offer me tea as thanks. I notice their cat sitting in the window. Its movement reminds me of something, and after a while, I realize it's the shadow monster. I ask a few questions to round out the details. Turns out the neighbors had one of those lights on a sensor, which turn on when they detect movement. Cat jumps up to ledge, light turns on, but it was an eco light, so warmed up slow. It then went out, loudly. I'm too embarrassed, relieved to recant the story, so I make my excuses, leaving the nice couple upstairs with the impression that their new downstairs neighbor is a weirdo who stares at cats, has a really keen interest in light bulbs, and a predilection for nervous laughter. They don't invite me up for tea anymore, but they do ask if I'm okay every time they see me. Story 7. When I lived with an ex and her family, her dad's van was keyed very badly. So being an electrician, he decided to set up a camera overlooking the street where we parked our cars. The camera was accessible via an app, which I had on my iPad, and it would pick up on movement, record it and save it, or alternatively, you could watch it live. The house was just around the corner from a pub, so we just assumed it was some pissed up person mucking about on their way home. Anyway, one Saturday morning, I go out to the street to see that all our cars have been keyed. I frantically checked the app, and there was an update at 11:30 p.m., but it was just a dog walker. Myself and my girlfriend's dad check all the updates from the last 24 hours, but nothing. Very strange. We thought that maybe someone could have moved the camera because it was in plain view outside of the house, so my girlfriend's dad moved it to a more subtle position. From then on, every Friday night for several weeks, we'd have the iPad set up in the living room, watching the camera live. Nothing happened, and we soon lost all interest and forgot about it. A few months later, I was on my iPad in the house on a Friday night deleting some apps when I came across the camera app. Me and girlfriend shared a joke and decided to watch it live to see if the cars would get keyed again. We were having Chinese food and watching a film and set up the iPad on a table in the corner of the room. At around midnight, my girlfriend had gone to bed and I was watching the end of the film with my dog when something caught my eye on the iPad. I totally forgot I'd left it running. I watched the screen as I saw what looked like an old lady walk past the house in cars. What was she doing out at this time, I thought? Something to do with the church. Maybe that was opposite. Soon she disappeared out of shot as she waddled down the street. About 5 minutes later, the movie had finished and I turned all the lights off in the living room. The only light I had was the iPad screen. I picked it up and went to turn it off, but stopped when I see something on the screen. It was the old lady again, standing outside the house, just stood perfectly still, staring straight into the camera. What the duck is going on, I thought. It was terrifying. She must have stood there for a good 2 minutes before reaching one hand into her pocket and pulling an object out and walking over to my car. She then frantically started using the object on the top bonnet. Me and my dog then bolted out of the back door. I unlocked the gate and burst out into the street, ready to catch this old Karen red-handed, but nothing. The street was completely empty. No old ladies, just the parked cars outside the house. I jogged up and down the street, but saw nobody. There's no way she could have got away in the seconds it took me to get out of the house. Confused, I went to bed, and the next morning I told my girlfriend and her old man all about what had happened the previous night. He studied the recordings, and the camera had picked it all up to her walking past originally, and her walking away after she had vandalized the car, and me and my dog appearing a split second later on camera. My girlfriend's dad took the recordings to a work colleague in hope he could enhance the picture quality so we could see the lady in more detail. It worked. We got to see her in all her glory. My girlfriend's mom recognized her. She lived 2 doors down from us and regularly visited the church opposite. We used the recording and reported it to the police. My girlfriend and I split up soon after, so I don't know what happened. I certainly never saw a penny for any of the damage caused to my car. Just to clear up some info that's been mentioned in the comments. When I said enhanced picture quality, I'm pretty sure he just took the video recording, slowed it down, and blew up the picture to get a better look at the woman. There was no spy crap going on to my knowledge. I honestly cannot explain how I did not see the woman walking down the street when I went outside. When I looked back at the recording, I appear on camera too after she disappears from shot. The only logical explanation is she heard me coming and dived into a bush or under a car, although surely my dog would have seen her. Story 8. I saw this one video of some guy in California that went to this house and spent 2 hours licking their security camera while that doorbell, disappeared for a bit, and then came back to resume the licking of the camera for another hour or so. Story 9. Wasn't asleep, but when I lived with my ex, we had a few security cameras and they send you alerts when there's motion detected. I was at work and got an alert that there was motion in the living room, and I figured it was my ex coming home early, but I checked it anyway. Instead, I saw my dog standing in the middle of the living room, staring at the wall. He stood there for a minute, and then got on the sofa to sleep. 2 things were terrifyingly off about that. One, my dog was a puppy at the time and was crated when home alone. The crate is made of solid wood, metal grates, and has thick and heavy eye-hook latches, so there's no conceivable way he could have opened the door. Two, he was kept in the office, which is located off the hall, and we kept the door separating the living room from the hall closed during the day to keep the room cooler for him. I looked back at the recording because I was very confused, and unfortunately, because the hall door was closed, I couldn't see how his crate got opened. But the hall door opened on its own and he walked out into the living room about 30 seconds later. The hall door was like a regular bedroom door. It closed with a latch and wouldn't have opened even if you pushed on it. There were no sounds aside from the normal house noise. No cars or people had been in view of the outside cameras since we'd left, and no other motion detections had went off. Story 10. Fell asleep on the couch that night. Had a bad incident of sleep paralysis. Watched the playback a few hours later of me trying to pull myself out of it. With the night vision being engaged, it looks really creepy because eyes glow combined with the slow blinking during the event. It's like watching a zombie version of yourself. Story 11. I wasn't asleep, but it was 1 a.m. Both my Ring cameras go off, which, because of how they're angled, means only a full-sized adult can be in my yard. I check the notification. A dude starts walking up the sidewalk to my yard. Camera with floodlight kicks on. Dude instantly turns around like he was mistaken and goes on to the neighbor's yard. Neither us nor the neighbor knew him. Shady. Mostly, I just get videos of cats visiting, though the full-sized adult thing. One camera is angled down, one is angled out from a raised porch. Thus, they only both go off if there is movement in my yard taller than waist high. It's a great setup. Highly recommend. Story 12. Early one morning, many years ago, I got a call from my buddy across the street. Get over here. You've got to see this. So I get over there and we get into his office and pull up the previous night's security footage on his computer. He had installed one to keep an eye out for a vengeful ex-friend who had been going onto his property and vandalizing things. He begins to fast forward the video and pauses around the 3 a.m. mark. At first there wasn't much going on, but gradually we began to see signs of movement in the shadows of his neighbor's front lawn. All of a sudden, a very tall, pasty white man with a beard and long, straggly hair stepped out of the shadows and stood on the sidewalk in front of my friend's house and stood staring at the street. "What the duck?" I said. "Is he naked?" My friend shook his head. "Keep watching." The man stepped all the way in front of the house, where he was now illuminated by a nearby street lamp. I could see that he was wearing a pair of briefs that were nearly as white as he was. "Who is this guy?" "I've never seen him around here before," I said. "Me neither. Keep looking. It gets better." Indeed, it did. Abruptly, the man turned and faced the house for several moments, then began to slowly creep up the driveway towards the front door in a highly exaggerated manner that immediately brought to mind Elmer Fudd hunting wabbits. He then stared at the front door for a full 10 minutes and moved over to tap on the front windows a few times before noticing the light of the security camera. He approached it and appeared to wiggle it around a bit before tiring of it and moving over to the side of the house. It had been a trash pickup day, and my friend had not yet moved his empty can to the backyard. We could see the man kind of fumbling with something, but between the relative darkness and an obscuring palm frond, we couldn't tell what he was doing. Our question was soon answered when he wandered back into the center of the yard with the empty 50-gallon garbage can over his head. All you could see was his pale legs. He kind of roamed around aimlessly for a few moments, even ducking down entirely into the can when a passing car went by. He soon tired of the garbage can, pulled it off, and rolled it down the driveway where it came to rest against the car. The strange placement of the garbage can in the morning being what had prompted my friend to check his cameras in the first place. For his final act, the man approached the small orange tree in the corner of the yard, plucked off a few of the larger fruits, and started trying to juggle them. The first two dropped straight to the ground, and he just stared at the one still in his hand for a long moment before slinging it as hard as he could across the street. He then kicked the other two across the yard. He stood there for a few seconds more, as if just realizing where he was and wondering how he got there. Then he shuffled off screen and out of sight. A few minutes later, he showed up again, this time across the street and heading back in the direction he had come. He had the orange he had previously thrown there in his hand. We lost sight of him in the dark, but as he was turning the corner, we could just barely make him out, reflected in another street lamp. We never did find out who he was, and we never saw him again. But we did find the orange he had picked laying further down the street later that day. Story 13. Obligatory not my story. My brother got a new security camera, and he was having trouble sleeping. He lives in an apartment building with a couple of other people in the hallway. He kept waking up to a person trying to open his door in the middle of the night. He eventually found out it was a neighbor who got drunk a lot and was trying to get into the wrong apartment. The neighbor eventually went away. A couple weeks later, he came home and there were a bunch of cops outside of his apartment. Turns out that his other neighbor, who had also gotten harassed by this guy in the middle of the night, had hit the guy who kept knocking on my brother's door. My brother caught it all on his security camera, turned it over to the police, and the neighbor got arrested and went to jail. He didn't end up going to jail. My brother still sees him walking around the apartment complex. Story 14. Near midnight, my car alarm was triggered for weeks. Never could find who did it. So I put up cameras to see what happened. 3 nights of not getting anything. I pissed myself when I found a raccoon versus squirrel wrestling match at my front door. Story 15. I was living and sleeping in the basement of my parents' house at the time. My father, mother, and baby sister lived there with me. I can remember that my sister was not home this particular night because she would stay at the library quite late because she was in college. I've only ever recorded myself sleeping 4 times. 3 of the 4 times nothing strange happened, but the one time and last time that something did happen, it was about 3 a.m. I usually fall asleep about and set up the camera before I just lay in bed. And my recorder was on this particular night. I usually sleep with the fan on and my feet off the edge of the bed because my feet get hot, so I need the fan to keep cool. I'm pretty sure I heard a loud thump sound at about 3 a.m., like something had dropped and hit the floor. I didn't wake up, but my feet keep shaking like if you're feeling anxious about something and keep tapping your feet. As I was watching the recording, something flies in front of my camera and lands on it. When I woke and watched the video on my computer, I fast-forwarded and only noticed because the camera moved all by itself with it pointing at me. I don't think my parents had came downstairs in the middle of the night. So I turned up the sound and I didn't hear it at first, but after I turned the volume to max, I heard a high-pitched noise myself. I had no idea what it was, but for a second I was kind of scared that I might have something else. I went to ask my parents and sister and they said they didn't come downstairs. I stayed up one night after this and pretended I was asleep. It turns out that I had a bat that would live in my heater exhaust vent and occasionally come down and fly around my room. It's so strange because I've never heard him flying around and hitting himself off the walls. It might have been the first time it's ever came in, but it was strange for it to start coming into my room once to set up the camera. I really thought I had a bat problem, but it was just this one bat. I was relieved to know that it was just a single bat, but I was just always worried that it's been there for quite some time, and I am shocked that I never heard it before that night. Also, I was worried it had bitten me, and I would turn into a vampire. I found out that a bat was in my basement room that came through the heater exhaust vent. Story 16. I live in an apartment unit right next door to the office. They installed a new security camera for their door, which covers a part of mine as well, shortly after I moved in. The office manager knocked on my door a few days after the install and asked me to come look at something. She pulled up footage of the night before that showed a guy pacing in front of my door for 6 hours. He even left for a couple minutes and came back with something he tried to stick in my door frame a few times. I was asleep the whole time and heard nothing. Turned out to be a recent ex of a friend of mine. I'd only met him once. Still have no idea how he knew where I lived, unless he followed her to my place once, as we live close by each other. Cops called, reports filed. They eventually found him. He had been on a pretty bad substances bend since their breakup from what I heard, and has no recollection of being there. Story 17. There has been a string of car break-ins in our neighborhood lately. We have had cameras up for a couple of years now, so we checked the footage. Unfortunately, while we have the wannabe thieves on camera, there was nothing worth stealing in either mine or my husband's car. We have no idea who they are. The cops can't do much without an ID. One of them is wearing very distinctive shoes, though, so we have been on the lookout for an unusual pair of Nikes and who might be wearing them. Sucks when you can only watch someone break into your car. I know it's a little off topic, but we did also have a funny one we caught on camera. Our neighbor is a huge douche who can't handle his drink. He likes to listen to crappy mariachi music all night and into the early morning, which wouldn't be such a problem on the weekend. But he likes to do it on a Wednesday night. It really is a pain in the ass when you have to go to work in the morning. Our neighbor called the cops on him, and we got to watch him get pepper sprayed in the face on camera. It was hilarious. Story 18. My friend showed me footage that her home security camera got out of a high neighbor running into her door and shattering the glass with his head. The weird part was that he didn't get hurt, smashed the glass, but came out without any damages to the head. When he approached her door, he stopped for a moment and then charged like a bull. Story 19. I have an Amazon Ring, and on Halloween night, a black cat laid down on my walkway. The shadow made it look like a huge cat, like a panther or something. Freaked me out until I zoomed in to see it was just a little black kitty. Story 20. Baby cam. Not security, but for my top post of all time, the camera only makes noises when it goes from day to night mode, so I have no idea why she was staring silently at it, or for how long. Story 21. When I lived with my dad, he once had this ambitious raccoon that discovered he never locked the doggy door. So the raccoon would come in, eat a bunch of crap, and run away before we'd wake up. So he put an automated doggy door in, so it only works if my dog went near it with a collar designed to open it. Story 22. Some time ago, I kept finding this weird whitish sludge in the middle of the corridor when I woke up in the morning. Me and my wife suspected that the dog was do stuff while we were asleep. So we set up a motion sensor camera and left it running during the night. When I checked the recording at one point, I see this white figure emerging from the darkness and skittering real fast across the corridor until it slammed into the wall. On closer inspection, I realized it was my wife who was bending backwards and crawl like a crab real fast until she hit something and fell down. Anyways, turns out she sleepwalks or sleep crabs, so now I have to give her pills for that. Story 23. We caught a neighbor who stole a package off our front porch that Ups had dropped off. It was an expensive car part. IDK, what kind? My husband is a car nut. He was very quick to give it back when the police showed up at his door because my husband wanted his car stuff rather than press charges and have it go to evidence. Story 24. My sister has video of her Great Pyrenees being attacked by 2 pit bulls. My sister's dog was 4 times the pit bull's age and managed to put one down on her own, as well as severely injure the other one. My sister's yard was entirely fenced in with electrified fencing. These dogs powered through the pain of the electric fence and attacked my sister's dog, only to be put down by a dog many times their senior. The owners of the dog later came out and collected their 2 pit bulls and shot at my sister's dog, prompting her and her husband to respond with 9-nipture return fire. They were outside at the time, checking the fence line. The 2 pit bull owners were hit in the stomach and leg. Ambulance came out and collected the 2 dog owners, illegals, and police took statement telling my sister not to talk to anyone. After it was all said and done, my sister realized she had been hit by one of the pit bull owners' 22 LR rounds in her shoulder. She never felt it and was never checked out by the ambulance. She was watching the security footage later and saw the blood spot in her shoulder on camera. She realized she was hit after her husband checked her over. Story 25. Caught a hit on camera. Wasn't sleeping, but not home at the time. Came home to cops and helicopters up the street from a property I owned. Turns out there was a fight over money owed at a dice game on the corner opposite my property the day before. Somehow the 2 gentlemen met back up the next day, maybe under the guise of paying the debt. One guy was driving a car, and the other guy was hanging on the corner waiting for him. When the driver pulled up, the passenger hopped in the front passenger seat, hit the driver, and casually got out. The car slowly rolled across the street and stopped against the curb. Cameras caught the whole thing. The passenger shooter walked down the block toward my building, facing the camera I had pointed up the block the whole time. He then turns in front of my building and gives a full side profile, still walking by, although you could tell he was nervous as he was looking around quite a bit and looking over his shoulder. He then turns the corner and goes down a side street, breaking into a sprint, which the cameras caught as well. Detectives reached out the next day and we met up at the building. We watched the whole thing and I made copies for them. Never heard anything more about it. Unrelated to cameras, I was also a witness to an attempted murder of a cab driver a year later and got to ride along with the cops as they were looking for the getaway car. We tore ass all over the neighborhood trying to find those guys. No luck that day, but the dummies used the cab driver's credit card at a convenience store on the same block they live on. A few hours later, and they got caught that way. I had to testify, which was nerve-wracking. It was only a preliminary hearing, and I never got called back in, so no idea what happened from there. The cab driver was at the hearing also and doing well. He was an elderly guy, just making some extra money after retirement, and these scumbags set him up by calling for a cab to a deadish end area and ended up hit him in the leg for his wallet and phone. Story 26. My parents live on an L-shaped large piece of property with a dirt road that runs along the inside corner of the L. My dad walked out of the house very early one morning on his way to work and sees someone pull off the dirt road onto the opposite end of their property. Before he can get in his truck to investigate, the trespassers peel out and take off the opposite direction and he can't catch them. He goes to work suspecting poachers and gets a trail camera to attach to a tall tower he built as a lookout point/deer stand. He goes out once a week to swap SD cards and batteries. Never sees much more than animals and the occasional car on the dirt road. This goes on for months, and everyone kind of forgets about it. My grandfather goes in the hospital for heart surgery, but never leaves the hospital, dying after not recovering from a coma after surgery. Things start to settle down after my grandfather's death, and I'm over to work on a computer for my mom. Dad goes and trades cards and batteries and brings the full one back. Part of the issues they had was reading SD cards, so I load the card and flip through the several hundred pictures. I get bored and leave my mom to it. She's visibly upset and looks at my dad and says, "Do you know who that is?" He says, "It looks like your dad." I look and it does definitely look like him. Very distinctive clothing and hat, but missing his dog and gun that never left his side when in the woods. He'd been dead for over a month at the time, and the cards had been changed several times since. There was only a single picture, and there would have been no way to get to where this person was without having triggered the camera several times along the way. He had not been out to their property in a few years, let alone to that part of their property. I still have no explanation for it. Story 27. Neighbors have security cameras that caught 2 people outfitted to look like Jehovah's Witness reps that were actually armed thieves. The pair did several burglaries in the area before reports to the police from neighbors caught them in the act. Story 28. This incident is actually the reason why we got security cameras. My stepmom owns a little cottage up in Michigan where she grew up. We spend most of the time I'm with them in the summer at the cottage. It's in a very safe and small neighborhood. Everyone knows everyone. Of course, we always lock the doors and close the blinds and whatnot, but we always have one light on somewhere in the house so that it looks like someone's up. We all went to sleep pretty late one night, and I stayed up a bit longer binging Shane Dawson conspiracy theory video. By a bit longer, I mean to 1 or 2 in the morning. By then, I was all but out, so I turned off my phone and went to sleep. The next morning, when I was brushing my hair, my stepmom said in a really nervous tone of voice, "Jack," not my dad's real name, "why is there a handprint on the kitchen window?" My dad, of course, said he didn't know. It didn't match any of our hand sizes, so it was none of us. And it was on the outside, duh. Why would any of us go outside in the middle of the night just to touch the kitchen window? The place where the handprint was is pretty close to the ground, so we assumed the person that did it was crawling or crouching to not be seen. Our doors and windows were locked, and the light was on, so we think that's why nobody actually broke in. A little while later, we got security camera, story 29. Not asleep, but we were eating breakfast. There's a school down the street from our house. It's literally 2 houses down. Anyways, in the mornings, there's lots of traffic and children with their parents to school. They walk past our house nearly every day, and we never thought anything of it. Anyways, one day there was a kid who we caught on the security camera running, and there was some guy chasing after him. Turns out he was trying to kidnap the kid, and we had it on tape. The kid got to the school and told his teacher, and police came and asked to see what we recorded via camera. Crap's crazy. Watch your kids. He got arrested for attempted kidnapping or something like that, and the kid is totally safe now. Now we see his dad take him to school, story 30. We got it on camera, but got it live. That was last year in like October or something, when a guy comes to my house, I live with my parents and my grandparents, and rings. My grandpa decides to go open the door, it's 3 a.m., and a man is standing there saying that he wants to talk to his sister. My grandpa asks him, where does his sister live? And he points out the house in the right corner, facing my neighbor's house. My parents gets up and go meet my grandpa on the stairs, and the man at the door asks for the telephone to call her. My grandpa didn't see anything and went on with it just when my parents say, don't get the phone and lock the door. Maybe he'll leave soon. So my grandpa just locks the door and goes upstairs with my parents, which woke me up. We wait 5-10 minutes and the guy leaves. We called the police on this because he didn't seem to be there, while keeping an eye on him from our front door camera. He left pretty soon after we called the police, and we check on the street if he doesn't bother anyone else. Nothing else happens that night. Next day, I get back from school, and as soon as I get in, my dad tells me that the guy was spotted 1 or 2 streets away. The police were sent later on the day when we called them, and took him. No handcuffs because he didn't seem dangerous. Turns out the guy has been having issues with his sister, and the guy's been going around many houses around 3 night that week before he got arrested. And the weirdest thing about this is that he was released a day or 2 after the arrest because he was judged not dangerous. And now, since around March 2019, he is checking in people's recycle bins and trash cans if the bags are closed or have no bags, for soft drink and liquor bottles. He does it during the day, so it's less creepy now, but it's still weird. Story 31. I used to work for a company in California. Pretty small office just off the side of the road. Lots of gang activity around the area. They've got the Ring doorbell camera so they can safely tell if they can open the door at night. One night, there's a group of guys hanging around looking at our property. We don't think much of it because they leave in about 10 minutes. Next day, a guy shows up and just walks into our fabrication shop in broad daylight, looking around. Never has this happened before. Our boss intervenes immediately. Boss, can I help you? Guy, oh crap, hey there, are you guys hiring? Boss, no, you have 5 seconds to duck off. Guy leaves in a mad dash. We called the cops and they find him walking down the street 5 minutes later. Turns out the gang was planning on robbing our facility while we were on holiday leave, and they'd assigned him to scout out the interior. Story 32. The guy wearing dark clothes with a hood over his face who walked up to our fence at 3 a.m. saw the beware of dog sign and the fake security cameras we have out to hide the ones we really have, who then proceeded to get down and half crouch, crawl through our gate and into our yard in an attempt to not be seen by the fake cameras, and got halfway to our door before my sweet good boy went total hellhound and raced to the front door from our bedroom to inform us someone was out there. As soon as the guy heard the dog and saw the lights in our place come on, he just got up and straight ran through the gate and down the street. We filed a complaint with the cops. Nothing ever came of it. He definitely was testing if we really had a dog or a security system in place, and that just freaked the hell out of me. We went and got motion-activated lights after that as an added deterrent. Good boy, I got a steak dinner the next night. He's damn lucky I didn't open the door. Story 33. Not while I was asleep, but I was home alone one day blasting music in my room. My dog was sitting on my staircase where she could see the front door, and my room is right at the top of the stairs. When the song ended, I heard my front door open. We have an alarm system, and when a door or window opens, it goes beep beep. And then I heard my dog growling like I've never heard before. My gut knew it wasn't a family member. My dad was out of town and my mom and sister were gone. I texted my mom saying, "Where are you?" And she said she was at the store. I called the police and hid in my closet. I live in a safe area, and they took 20 minutes to come to my house. The operator stayed on the phone with me and told me to stay quiet. When the police and my mom finally got back home, we checked the security cameras. The footage glitched right when the person came into the front door, so all we could see was a tall black silhouette. The light was shining in from behind him. Never found out who it was, but they must have left when they either saw my dog or heard that someone was home. I actually just remembered one that did happen at night. 2 high school kids went around my neighborhood at night stealing things from people's cars. They stole my mom's purse out of her car and used her card at the nearby McDonald's, and they were caught from McDonald's security cameras because we couldn't make out their faces in our footage. Story 34. This isn't my story, but it happened to a couple people on my block, including my house. One of my neighbors at the time caught it on camera. They have moved since then. They moved about 4 to 5 years ago. On my street, a whole bunch of people keep getting their flags stolen, pole included. All the flags were Baltimore Ravens flags. The neighbor had a security camera in their window. I don't remember where the camera actually was. But after a week, I don't remember when exactly they looked at the cameras. They saw this dude walk up and down the street stealing people's flags, my house included. The camera only show about 4 or 6 houses up from them. Dude then walks right into their yard, looks at the camera, steals the flag with the pole included and runs. Me and my mom went out to look in a nearby neighborhood to see if anyone there stole the flags and put them up at their house. Still can't find the flags to this day. This was about 5 to 6 years ago. I'm 90% sure after he stole the flags, he got into his car and drove away. His car was right out front of the neighbor's house. They were able to pull his plate number. I don't think they took it to the police. Story 35. Not me, but my dad looked through his camera once and saw a stuffed animal placed right in front of the camera. We found out it was my mom playing a joke on him. Story 36. Wasn't exactly while I was asleep since my dad woke me up, but I live on a cul-de-sac and my dad told me to grab a weapon and come watch the cameras. The cul-de-sac was full of at least 8 police cars with the lights on, and more were parking up the street and running into the neighborhood. We didn't know WTF was going on, but if a fleeing criminal tried to break into our house to hide, we wanted to be ready. Turns out, some homeless dude lived in the woods behind my house and stole some jewelry from a Walmart about 15 minutes from my place. Story 37. I woke up one morning and my front door was wide open. Scared the crap out of me, but couldn't figure it out as nothing was missing. Went back and looked at my camera, and it turns out at around 4 a.m., the door just swings open for no reason. Never figured out why. Story 38. Wish I had had a dash cam a few months ago. The pharmacy had it on their camera outside, which is good because I could have been in a lot of trouble if someone claimed I hit someone and left. I drove up to the stoplight in our sleepy town and a lady came walking towards my car and laid down, just laid down right in front of my car. I honked my horn. The light went green and I was really confused. I kept honking and she got up. I decided that maybe I should do the regular thing you do with unwell people and put my car into reverse to back away slowly. Nobody was behind me. It seemed like a reasonable choice. Before I could though, she got up and tried to jump onto my car. So back away slowly didn't happen. This hit the gas fast in reverse happened. She got up screaming and tried again. Same thing again. I backed up fast and she hits road. I pulled around her on the road, left and called our town police. IDK if she was picked up. My husband told me when I got home, it's an insurance scam thing. She did seem unwell though, and I hope she's getting help wherever she is. I think she should maybe rethink her life choices before she does get hit. If she did this to one of the more common vehicles here. Semis, farm equipment trucks. She's going to end up really bad. Story 39. We have quit a big yard with only a gate in the front, and we live in the middle of city. I was asleep during this, but my parents saw it happen and I saw the aftermath. On the camera images, there was a very drunk guy who climbed over our gate and stated screaming, "Bella, Bella." My parent raced outside and asked the guy what he were doing while escorting him out of our yard. He said his dog ran into our garden. They looked for the dog with the man for about half an hour but could find it at this pion. My parents sent the man home and went to look at the camera footage. I have woken up at this pion. We were looking at the footage and realized that there was no dog at all. Yeah, that man was pretty wasted. Story 40. Saw a woman talking to herself stealing my trash. I was so confused the week I moved in because every day I threw trash away. My can was empty and I kept convincing myself I was just losing it. Finally got my cameras up and realized what was happening. Turns out the lady went to every can up and down multiple streets every night taking and throwing away trash. Found out she had some mental health issues and lived around the corner. Move the cans to the backyard instead of the side of the house after all that. Story 41. One night, the camera on the front, facing to the road, captured a white car that pulled up near the gate, backed onto the road, drove a few steps ahead, then backwards, then forwards, switched lights off, then on, then fog lights on. Special lights in Europe, don't know if they are around the world. Fog light off, forward, backward, lights off, lights on, and drove off. Never saw that car again. The id was not even from the country I'm living in. Story 42. Not a home camera, but one at work. We had some issues with stuff being stolen out of offices overnight, so we set up a camera that recorded to a network share. We placed the camera so that you could really only see the top half of the room, from the desks up, because we were mainly concerned about the change and USB keys that had gone missing. For a couple of weeks, there was nothing but the cleaning crew coming in real early, or the occasional guard doing routine checks. One day, we checked the video from my office mate's computer and saw a guard sit down at my office mate's desk and pick up his desk phone and have a half-hour conversation. There was no audio on the video, so we skipped through a bunch of the video, but the guy was just chilling, talking, laughing. Then he seemed to lean forward and get serious in conversation. Then he hung up the phone, stood up, and pulled up his pants. We all gasped, and then there was a moment of silence before we realized what had happened. My office mate, who was sitting at his desk while we watched the video, and realizing he was sitting in the chair some random guy had just pleasure in, immediately stood up and threw his chair into the hallway. Story 43. A random guy helped himself to my backyard. Thinking he was a thief, I was already picking my phone to call the non-emergency police line, only to look back at my tablet and see him moving my pot plants. Only my pot plants, some of which are very heavy. He even stepped back a couple of times as if to survey his handiwork. Once he was seemingly happy with their new arrangement, he then left the same way he came. I've never seen this man before in my life. WTF. Story 44. We had just recently taken in my nephew as well as his boyfriend who had ran from their abusive families. Both families were demanding I send them back, but didn't want to call the police, and I told them to duck off. A few days later, we saw on the security cameras that 3 nights in a row, some guys had tried every single door and window, even climbed up to see into the second-story windows. They were able to see into our room, a few of the kids' rooms. It creeped me. The duck out when I could see them on the camera inside my toddler room, staring through the window down at them. They even attempted to get through the dog door a few times. One of them got partway into the house, through the dog door, and had actually unlocked it to let the other 2 in. When my husband wandered into the kitchen for a drink, the guys panicked and ran back out, letting the door slam. My husband heard and ran over just in time to see them running for the fence. We reported it to the police, and since there was a few shots of their faces, they were recognized. Turns out they'd been paid to bring the boys back to their family's state. Story 45. Started to find a beer can or metal bottle in my front yard a couple times a week. Just figured they were blowing out of a neighbor's recycling bin. Finally, one day I wanted to see where it was coming from and watched as a man in his 60s drove up to my house, would stop, drink a beer, and toss it into my yard and drive off. So I started checking other days, and every day for the 45-day history I had, he came by my house between 11:05 p.m. Not he wouldn't always toss his trash, but that is what eventually got him caught. It didn't sit well with my wife or I, since we have 2 young daughters, so we contacted the PD. They waited that night, and here he came at the exact same time as always. Turns out, the guy was an alcoholic and for years had done this exact same driving routine every night. The kicker was our house was one of the last lots built, so nobody had questioned the trash in the empty lot for years. But with our house now there, he couldn't break his habit. PD scared him crapless, saying we could press charges for harassment. We had no desire to do this. I checked the cameras every day for 4 months, and he never came by again. Story 46. Doorbell. Cam went off at 3 a.m. Flipped to the live view, and there was a deer standing in my yard, staring directly at the camera. Close enough that the camera thought it was a person at the door. Deer stood there for a solid minute, just not moving. The eyes had that creepy night vision look, so it was extra weird. And then the deer took a huge crap while maintaining eye contact with the camera, and that kind of ruined the mood. Story 47. Not a security camera, but in real life. I was on my phone one night and I heard a scream outside, so I obviously go look and nobody is there. Then I get a text from unknown saying, "Look again, I can see you," or something like that. So I do, and I see a man all on black with what looks to be a weapon with some small girl on his arms. I immediately run to my mom's room, who shouts April Fools at me. The man on black was my dad and the girl my sister. I still hate the for that to this day. Story 48. I came home from work one day and could see prints in the snow going up our driveway, then veering left into a field by our house and eventually leading to the main road. We were the only house on a long street. I could tell the prints weren't too recent, as some fresh snow had settled into them. I checked the security cameras. Starting at midnight and fast-forwarding through the early morning hours, convinced I would catch on camera the weirdo wandering our property and trying to break in and hit us. After a half an hour of staring at the screen, the perpetrator finally came into view. A horse from the field across the street had broken out and meandered through our yard and field by our house at around 5 a.m. The buildup was terrifying. The result of the prints was adorable and hilarious. Story 49. Not really creepy, but once on my camera, I see my cat walk into the kitchen, and then I hear a bang noise, kind of like pots and pans falling to the floor. Right after that, I see my cat sprinting out. Story 50. Not me, but a family friend. They live in this pretty nice community. The houses are really nice and whatnot, but all of the garage entrances and driveways are in the back and all connect to this small road. There was a string of car thefts in the area, so they put out cameras just in case. They go on a vacation for a few days, they didn't specify where, and they come back and check the cameras. There's this guy who spent a good hour walking up and down the street trying to open up all of the car doors. Not with a crowbar or anything, but just by using the handle. For the first few cars, he was just pulling the handles really hard. Maybe he thought if he pulled hard enough they would open. But by the time he got to my family friend's house, he looked super bored and was essentially just checking if anyone had forgotten to lock their cars. It seems stupid, but just remember that this was probably the guy, or one of the guys, who were stealing all of the cars. At one point, it had actually worked, and that's just really sad. Story 51. Not on my camera because it had just been replaced, and the stupid installer didn't configure it to record on motion. But after going to sleep one night, the next day I woke up and couldn't find my vape. All vapors know you just don't lose your vape in your own house. So after not being able to find it for an hour or two, I checked the security system. About 30 minutes after I went to bed, wife was already asleep. Basement door opened. Basement. Motion-triggered basement camera went offline, unplugged. Main floor motion went off a bunch of times. Basement motion went off camera. Went back online. Basement door opened and shut. Basically, someone came into my house while we were sleeping and stole my vape. Nothing else was missing. Weird. Story 52. When I was pregnant with my second baby, I had really bad prenatal anxiety and was convinced I was going to die in childbirth. I kept having a really strong premonition where I would hear this white noise, and it would consistently happen when I was preparing for my imminent death, preparing my will, writing up instructions for my husband, who barely knows his sin. Well, occasionally I would hear this woman singing in a super creepy kind of breathy voice, in addition to the white noise, and also this really deep male voice. I naturally assumed I was having auditory hallucinations and started seeing a therapist. It actually ended up being the security cameras we were using as baby monitors. When we set up the camera in the new baby's room, they gave us a free trial of the monitoring that saves the video. The monitor would malfunction and replay events from the previous night, me singing my son to sleep, the white noise machine in his room, etc. It would crash after replaying the scene, so I didn't realize it was happening and assumed I was going insane. Story 53. One night, a bunch of cars in our neighbor were broken into, including my son's. We checked our security cameras and saw the guy going through my son's car, and then he walked over to my neighbor's house and up onto their back deck and stared through their French doors for about 15 minutes before leaving. Story 54. While at work, a random guy would walk to our door and search through our front yard where the UPS guy or FedEx guy usually drops off packages. I thought it was just a package thief. He eventually stopped showing up, so I let it go. Some weeks later, I was home alone, and he, in broad daylight, showed up again. I'm a proud owner of a pistol, so I decided to give him a good scare if he wanted to keep coming in my yard. When I opened the door, he asked me if I got a package addressed to an Emma. Nobody I live with has Emma in their name. We got the guy's plate numbers, and the police helped track him all the way down to Rhode Island, around 4 hours away from where I live. He was, in fact, a package thief who was stealing his ex-girlfriend's package of an iPhone 7 to our house, which has the same address as his girlfriend. But she misplaced the address and sent it to the same address but to the state I live in instead of hers. I never got an update again. Story 55. I used to have security cameras on her front porch. I was growing up. I grew up in a farming town where everyone knew each other, so when something happened, they could always identify straight away if they were from our town or not. I used to check the cameras when I was bored, and I usually checked what happened around 2-3 a.m. I'd never found anything weird but this. One time, a black van with no lights pulled up our driveway, visible from the porch camera. A man jumped up and slowly creeped to our front door. He reached for the door handle and then saw the camera. What happened next was the weird part. He promptly took his hand away from the door handle and started staring and smiling at the camera. He then walks up to it and licks the camera. He then spins around on one heel, walks back to the van, and drives very slowly out of the driveway. I told my parents, and they contacted the police, who couldn't find anything else about him. We never saw or heard anything about him again. Story 56. Oh. Story time. So, My dad had 2 cameras set up, one for his truck, one for my SUV. His truck is always parked in front of the steps to our house. Mine is parked a short distance from his truck. 5 years ago, my dad caught an army of raccoons coming into our house through a cat door, taking pieces of trash out of the trash can and walking out with it. My dad couldn't figure out why it was taking more time to take the trash out. He viewed the camera a month later, and all you could see was 12 raccoon eyes charging in and out of the house. My dad did finally catch them in-house and shot one. Game and Fish wasn't happy and wanted HUD to file charges on him. Didn't work out though because they technically broke into our home. My dad was defending himself. Story 57. Not my camera and not my house, but while visiting some close family friends during a backpacking trip through Ireland, they warned me not to go out at night as there was an animal, most likely a feral dog, that had been attacking people and other animals in their area for a few weeks. They then proceeded to show me grainy footage of a camera they had outside their farmhouse. It was really bad quality, but it was clear enough for me to see a horse staggering around their lawn at night, with its jaw completely torn off. Have that image scared into my brain for the rest of my life. Story 58. My locked, closed front door opening in the middle of the night and then closing again. Nothing came in or out, and the door was locked and shut tight when I woke up. Story 59. A man took my Bluetooth doorbell with a camera off of my door piece, and I spent at least 2 hours watching what he was doing. Apparently, he sells sub-sentences and smokes at night. Who knew? Story 60. A cop coming down my driveway with his gun drawn. Some kid got a minor gunshot wound, screwing around with a friend. To keep his friend from getting in trouble, he said someone hit him randomly at a house party. He made up an address for this party and came up with my address. I was actually sleeping at a friend's house across town when it happened, but the motion alert woke me up. I called 911 and told them nobody is home, and cops are crawling around my house, banging on my doors, and I can clear up whatever their issue is. The dispatcher told me they don't need anything from me and hung up. The cops continued to look around in my backyard and standing at my front door. I called again. This time I got a more helpful dispatcher who put me in touch with an officer at the scene who filled me in on the whole thing, backstory and all, and the police left. Story 61. Not what I saw, but what it did. I have a newborn, so I was awake at 3 a.m. feeding him. I had my head down facing my lap so I could see him, and I kept hearing clicking, and it was like everything got dim and bright over and over. Thinking I'm just going insane from sleep deprivation, I'm ignoring it. As I'm going back to bed, I see the ceiling is flashing green. I look over and the security camera is what's clicking and blinking. Open the manual and it says blinking green light indicates someone is watching the live video feed. But the only people that have access are myself and my husband, who is asleep, and his phone was off, meaning someone got into my account and was watching us sleeping in the middle of the night. Story 62. A heavily pregnant young girl jumped my front fence, made it 4 me or 5 me into my yard before being tackled hard to the ground by a female police officer. Cop car then pulls up, and a second female police officer gets on top of her, too. Was kind of blown away by the struggle they had and the strength of the girl, given how tiny and pregnant she was. Think beach ball belly. No doubt it was substances related. Hopefully, she sorts herself out for the sake of the kid. I did hear the commotion, screams at the time, and popped my head out the front door. Received a, everything is okay, go back inside, and so I went back to bed. Story 63. My neighbor told me years ago that when she checked the footage from her security cams outside her front house, she found a guy coming in her yard, picking her flowers and sticking them down the front of his underwear. He was never seen again, just once. Story 64. My house has a garage door that opens up, and when open, it partially obstructs the view of the camera. One day, we left the door up all night by mistake. This is the only time we've ever done that. And in the morning, we all kind of freaked out and closed it right away. Then, we realized that one of our bikes were missing. We go through the security footage, and at about 2 a.m., a car drives up and stops right in front of our house. A guy comes out, steals the bike, puts it in his trunk, and leaves. Pretty much what we expected. The video wasn't high enough resolution to capture the license plate of the car, though, especially with it being at night, and the police basically said they couldn't do anything about it. Story 65. It's not exactly as major as some of the other stories here, but one night I woke up to my 2 shepherds going nuts. Sifted through the cameras the next day, and someone was scoping the house to break in and got spooked by the doggos barking. It's such an eerie feeling, knowing that someone was lurking around your property. Felt so vulnerable. The next day, however, I came home to find my back door wide open, and immediately, though hell no, this dude came back and broke in. Although nothing was touched or missing, sifted through the cameras again, and my dog had decided to use my back door keys to let himself out into the garden. What a panic. Now I have to hide my keys when I leave. Story 66. Not while I was asleep, but while I was on vacation. I have one of those motion detecting camera doorbells, and there was this one old white guy who looked to be around 50, 60, and he wouldn't knock or ring the doorbell when he came to our door. Instead, for whatever reason, he would stand there as if he was expecting somebody to open the door for him, not making a noise. After about 3 minutes would pass, he would just turn around and go on with his day. This happened around every other day for a span of about a week while I was out in Vegas with my parents. The odd part about it is that when we got back home from vacation, the old guy never showed up again. Story 67. This may or may not count, but I'll tell the story anyways. I provide tech support for a CCTV company. Anyways, I got a call from a customer asking me if it is possible to delete certain segments of recording. The reason he wanted to delete a certain clip is because one of the cameras had recorded a death. Anyways, most DVR units will overwrite on their own once the hard drive is full, or you can manually format the hard drive and delete everything at once. You cannot delete individual clips. So I go ahead and give the customer this information. His response creeped me out big time. He told me, "Oh, the cops are not gonna like that at all. I'm pretty sure the guy just hit someone." Story 68. I was skimming through some feed and curious because our neighbors had someone break into their vehicles, and this was after someone already had things stolen from their truck. Obviously, these people are casing the houses during the day. Anyways, saw a guy walk up to our truck and check to see if it's unlocked, turned around and left. So that's creepy. I saw someone had rang our doorbell and didn't recognize him. So I watched the video to see if he was welcome. Well, he rang our doorbell, but freed a hand and ran his hands across the top of our door. There's a little ledge above our door. I'm certain he was looking for a key to our home. Still freaky. Don't hide keys anywhere obvious. Story 69. We saw someone trying to prise our door handle off with pliers. Police say it was to make it easier to break the lock. We woke up, made some noise, and that scared the people doing it and made them run. But they decided to come back a further 2 times with more people. Both times failed, and after the 3rd time, they were caught. Turns out they were trying to steal our car by breaking into the house for the keys. My mother treated herself to an expensive, just realized car that she had her eye on. The thieves had already sold it and thought stealing it would be easy enough. We've got all 3 times saved on our security cameras. It's really chilling to watch people trying to break into your home. Story 70. Smelled kerosene in my chicken house, not for first time one morning. Reviewed cam footage. Good video of neighbor entering with kerosene can and pouring it on my birds. She hates me and my birds, maybe just me. Story 71. Well, I work nights, so I sleep during the day. Technically, this applies. A cop running over my mailbox in broad daylight. The funniest part to me was I went to check the mail and the box was just straight gone, vanished, poof. Thought to myself, hey, I can see what happened with these fancy cams. Didn't expect the comedy gold. To the cop's credit, he did call it in. Another unit came to document. They hauled the box away for security purposes, and it was replaced a day or 2 later. Runner-up, a raccoon sneaking into my garage in the middle of this day to rummage through a trash can that had nothing in it besides an empty pizza box. Story 72, my son saying weird stuff while having fever dreams, delusion. He had fevers a lot because he had chronic ear infections until we were able to have ear tube put in surgically. He had just turned 2 at the time, but when he had a fever, he suddenly said things that were much above his typical verbal and intellectual level, like counting to 20 or saying the full alphabet correctly, or really just speaking in full correct sentences in general, though they didn't really make sense logically. His pediatrician said, "Oh, that's normal." Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is where the myths about demonic possession come from. Story 73. I had been thinking of getting home cameras, hadn't done it yet. But last night there was a big dust storm, and this morning there's a perfect handprint in the dust on the table in my backyard. The only thing is, my backyard is fenced in with 11-foot high fencing all the way around, and no one should have been in or able to get into my yard all night. I'm heading over to an electronics shop at lunch to buy some cameras. Story 74. Woke up one day to a very weird feeling. I decided to check the cameras. This was around a month ago, BTW. Ended up seeing 3 dudes in black who were roaming around my house at around 2 a.m. Then they just left. I was very nervous for a couple of days after and still am a little bit. I have no idea what they were doing. Story 75. Wake up one day and check my phone, see a guy walk in between our cars, through our fenced-in backyard, leaving the gates open. He seems to be tiptoeing but doesn't look into our cars or windows or anything. I forward on to a family member who encourages me to send it to the police chief. We're in a small town. Sure enough, this guy broke into 2 homes that night, ended up being caught half naked and missing a shoe in a cornfield. It was the middle of winter and very cold. Don't do substances. Story 76. I had an umbrella over a patio table that was missing when I got up one day, reviewed the video and watched the wind catch it, and it flew straight up into the air. Quite entertaining. On a less entertaining note, I had someone come to my door and make physical threats. Later, this person tried to get a restraining order against me, saying it was me making the threats. I played the video for the judge, and he told the other party to leave me alone. Now, I have cameras all around my house. Story 77. At my high school before or sometime during the end of the day at dismissal, I was in the office and on the security television feed, there was a chicken clucking around trying to get inside the main entrance of the school. I'm not sure if buses had arrived yet, but it was still a funny sight. My high school is connected to the middle school, and right next to the middle school, someone lives with free-roaming chickens and roosters. I always feared running them over, being so close to a busy road. Apparently, they're sometimes seen roaming the school property or caught on security feed. Story 78. Not my camera, but nearby. Several people in my neighborhood shared creepy videos of a guy walking around the neighborhood at 3 a.m. on a freezing cold night. He was walking up to people's front doors and garages with this weird slide walk and then moving on to the next house. He was probably high, but the videos are just deeply uncomfortable because he looks like he's talking to himself and totally out of it. Story 79. Alarm went off when they called. We were both at work and we told them no one was home. One of the sensors just fell off, no biggie. But the video of the police entering was hilarious. The first guy comes in with the classic gun pointed at the ceiling, squattering, spinning, looking around thing. The second guy casually walks in behind him like he is visiting someone's house. You could practically feel the eye roll of second guy at first guy. Story 80. So I used to have this bully in 8th grade. This was just before Ring. We had these tiny cameras all around our house. Anyways, this bully said that he was gonna hit me and that he knew where I lived. My dad watched the security camera at night, and when he saw an 8th graders gave up in one of the cameras trying to disable it, he grabbed his .45 and confronted this idiot with the cops on the phone. He was not in school the next day and never bothered me again. Story 81. We weren't sleeping. It was midday. My neighbor went for a walk, and following him was a car speeding past our house. Next thing you see is his whole family running over. Supposedly, he had some business with substances dealers and they came to shoot him. He's been okay since then, though. Story 82. Most of my neighbors have the Ring doorbell camera. On our private Facebook group, one guy who lives in the center of the neighborhood showed us a disturbing video. An old man would approach and stand on his porch steps, just one step at a time with a break. So he would step up with both feet, then stay there for a couple minutes before going further up. Story 83. Coyotes making babies in my backyard. Squirrels beating up cats and random people checking if doors are locked. A few months ago, Q guy hit a lady during a home invasion down the road from me. I ended up giving my footage to the cops of that night, and from what I recall, it led in the guy being identified and arrested. Always hilarious when someone walks onto the property and then sees the cameras. They backpedal so fast. Story 84. I wasn't sleeping, but a crazy lady ran into my property, love in the country, nearest neighbor is 1/4 mile away, while screaming that men with guns were after her. She ran up to my front door, crouched, then peed everywhere. I had no idea what was going on. Opened the door and she barged in. She then ran to my recliner, sat down, and peed again. Called the police. They showed up and said she was a known crazy and hauled her off. We had to throw away the chair, absolutely drenched. Story 85. Funny story from a family friend. They have a tetherball pole on their front yard and their security camera was facing it and the entire yard. Then, out of nowhere, a lady came up and smacked the ball and then left. They saw the whole thing and laughed about it. They showed us the video, and we laughed about it too. Story 86. Screen on the security tablet next to my bed lit up rather bright for about 3 to 5 seconds. I ignored it and went back to sleep. The next day I went through the footage and could clearly see a face looking through window on my front door. This happened several times over the 2 years I lived at that rental property. Story 87. I made a motion-activated security camera from a webcam and a Raspberry Pi. It was awesome. It could detect motion and start recording, then upload the video to Dropbox. I set it up aimed at my door to test if it would pick me up coming in and out of my room. Literally the second day I had it up, I caught my roommate, who was gay, come into my room butt-ass naked, pleasure himself while I was gone. Story 88. I set up security cams around my house, and one night while playing War Thunder, I got a notification saying that there was movement and saw a man just staring into my bedroom window. And when I turned around to check, he ran off. Story 89. This dude, I was actually awake watching TV or playing video games, but I have a monitor to see all around my house next to my TV. I looked over and saw this dude creeping in my window. I answered the door with my gun. Guess he was looking for my neighbor, but thought he lived in my house. Story 90. My neighbor shared a video from his security system with people creeping past our houses in a van and taking photos in the middle of the night in what I'm assuming was planning for burglaries. Yeah, we moved. Earlier this week, my neighbor in our new neighborhood posted a video of someone breaking into their cars, walking into their backyard, and checking doors and windows. We're looking into more cameras. Story 91. My family had one installed 2 months ago in front of our garage. One night, we got an alert, and after watching over the tape, we saw a man doing cartwheels back and forth across our driveway. Very cool. Story 92. Not anything scary for anyone other than me, but I have been in bed reading these stories for about an hour when I just got a notification on my phone that there was movement at my front door. It was just my neighbor getting home. I live in an apartment, but holy crap. After some of these stories, my heart damn near gave out. Story 93. We consistently see a black cat once or twice a week on one of our 5 cameras. We don't have a black cat, and all these cameras are inside the house. Our dog doesn't ever act weird, like he's aware of it, and we have never found any cat hair anywhere, let alone a black cat's hair. Story 94. We woke up in the morning to a couple passed out in our backyard, and we looked over the footage. Turns out they climbed over the fence into our backyard and do substances. Not super creepy, but worrisome nonetheless. Story 95. Our neighbors took a massive crap on my lawn and wiped their ass with a shirt and left it there in the middle of the night. Caught it all on tape, but to this day, I'm still too scared to confront them. I just want to know what I did to make them do such a thing. Story 96. My addicted sister, with whom we have a no trespassing order and a restraining order, came into our house while we were sleeping, grabbed herself a drink, then left. But first she stared at our door for a good 5 minutes. Weird, and made us lock doors at all times. Story 97. A guy threw his shoes inside my house and tried to burst through the wall several times. Then, he stopped and stood there, staring at the grass for 10 minutes. Suddenly, he started to run and never came back. Story 98. Not creepy, but I installed a camera in my room after I caught my roommate stealing my stuff a few weeks ago. I've only caught her on it once so far. Walking into my room butt-ass naked, grabbing my cat off my bed and walking out. Safe to say she doesn't know I have a camera. Story 99. Woke up to a dead rabbit laying under our bird feeders. Scanned through the footage to see the rabbit hop up, snacked on discarded bird seed for a half hour, then just tipped over, pass. No idea WTF happened. Dude, just straight up pass. Some global warming crap. Story 100. The cats outside are forming a cult or a gang something. Every night, all their cats on the neighborhood are gathering on our backyard. They always bring dead stuffs. They put all the dead stuff in the middle, then they form a circle, and they start doing all the weird noises like a ducking cat meeting cult session. Story 101. We had a gentleman, lived 6 houses down, that would come onto our porch and sit in the rocking chairs there, consume damn near a 30 PK, which he obviously brought with him, and scroll through whatever it was in his phone. He never left a mess, so we never bothered confronting him. Story 102. My mom woke up to a notification on her phone that someone was at the door, checked out what it was, and some creepy man, who we'd never seen in the neighborhood before, was licking on the door. Weirdest stuff I've ever seen. Story 103. My dog would sit on my chest and stare into the security camera all night long. She would never move, just sit and stare. She's a brown pug/chihuahua weenie mix, and she never looks at the security cameras when she's walking around normally. IDK, it's weird to me. Story 104. While I was staying with a friend, his neighbor's security camera caught a guy walking up and down the street pulling on car door handles. Since he was directly across the street, I got a good view of him trying my car doors. Lock your doors. Hide your stuff. Story 105. A shirtless individual with a pistol looking for his dog at 10 o'clock at night. We had a short conversation about appearances, appropriate human interaction, and I sent him home. Redditors who watch security cameras for a living, what's the most interesting thing you've ever seen? Story 1. Not really a security camera per se, but I think it qualifies since it was a camera for our security. I was working in the Royal Danish Navy as a radar operator. My job was to gather intelligence, and one of the tools that I used for this job was a FLIR camera, which is a camera that can see heat sources. So at one point, we are sailing into the harbor of our capital city, Copenhagen, and I am scanning the water for any objects when I see a heat source in the water. I relay this information to my superiors, and they bring up the image that I am seeing on the big screen in the operations room. Everybody is arguing about what it is, and people are saying that it could be a diver in the water. That's when I see that it's actually a deer in the middle of a city with 1 million inhabitants. I relay this information to the ops room, and they tell me, no, that can't be a deer, it gotta be a human, and are slightly freaking out since divers in the water is usually what we train for in force protection. However, I tell my superior, I promise you, I've been hunting all my life. That is a deer. So they're satisfied with what I tell them, and we watch the deer swim far out into the ocean before we can't see it anymore. That was one interesting thing I saw with that camera. Story 2. Actually have some stuff I've been sitting on. I worked for a company installing major car park access equipment to a market very much unaccustomed to tickets, etc. I have footage of an elderly man being run down by his own vehicle, and within seconds of returning to his feet, slipping ass up on a curb. I've got cyclists getting clotheslined, cars attempting to evade, finding their tires spinning freely thanks to the giant rock now wedged under them. And no shortage of good old-fashioned collisions. Story 3. I worked at an outdoor music festival one summer that had cameras at various points along the fence to catch anyone trying to sneak in. There was an area surrounded by several bushes, and dozens of drunk couples would sneak over there for sex every day. They always looked so proud of themselves for discovering such a secret spot. No, 3 couples in the last hour had sex in the exact same spot you're having it now. Story 4. I don't actually sit and watch cameras all day, but the bar I worked at had some. So anyways, it's a Monday night around 11 p.m., and it's generally pretty slow, but that day we were a bit busier than normal. Nothing crazy, but enough to have the entire bar and all of the tables filled. So in walks Crazy, which we'll call Candy, and her mom. I'm not sure who the second person was, but she's irrelevant. They come up to the bar in full yoga clothes and ask to sit in the dining room. The place I worked was also a full restaurant in a different room, and normally we do not allow people in there after the restaurant was closed. But the bartender decided that it was okay. After Candy gets the drinks, they leave to the other side. After about 30 minutes, I go to check on them, get their drink orders, grab empty glasses, and go back. The bartender prepares the drinks and takes them to Candy. At this point, her mom or whatever is gone, and the bartender comes back almost bursting into tears. Turns out when he gave her the drink, she whipped out her boobs and yelled, "Tito's! Tito!" There were no cameras to see that part of the interaction, but I wanted to tell you all how bat-crap crazy this girl was. So she comes up to the bar a few more times, and the regulars at the bar know the entire story and how crazy she is. So obviously when she comes in, people are staring and talking about her. So finally at about 1 a.m., she comes into the bar, sets her drink on an empty table, unzips her jacket, only to reveal she has nothing on under it. I have never seen this girl, and still have not seen her to this day. After the shift, we checked the video cameras and got videos on our phones of this insane girl playing with her boobs in the middle of a fairly packed bar. Sorry for the long story with such a mediocre ending. Just wanted to make sure people know how crazy she was. Story 5. At my old job, we saw an attempted death. The camera was a little far away, so you couldn't see the actual motion, but you saw a bright flash of light and red splatter on a window. Cops popped by for review and footage later. Apparently, dude in van was seen meeting with a well-known gangster just prior to him pass. Cops think victim owed the gangster some serious money and was told to pass it would be a lot worse. When he was carted off by the ambulance, apparently he was still alive though. Don't know what happened after that. Story 6. I work for a retail company in their data center. We have cameras that watch every entrance to the building and one overlooking the parking lot as a whole. One Friday, I get a call that morning and someone tells me that our gate is broken. We have a card access sliding gate. I figure it's fallen off the track, chain is broken, card reader's dead, something like that. I come into the office that morning and I find that the fence has been bent 90 degrees like someone drove right through it. This gate was 6 feet tall and easily 20 feet across and right down the middle. It's like someone opened a ducking door. So naturally, I go to the tape. Turns out that around 6 a.m., the night guy opened the gate for an 18-wheeler, who drove straight forward and then parked and went to our door, then walked back to his truck. I'm guessing he realized he was in the wrong place. We'd sometimes get deliveries, but never that early. What proceeds is a song and dance number with this truck and the gate that lasts for about 40 minutes. He'd back up, stop, get out, see the gate was opening, get back in, go to back up again, and see it was closing. He repeated this process about a dozen times. Ultimately, he just goes. I don't know why, but he flat out reverses and plows through the gate, bends it like Beckham. He gets out, sees the damage, walks to the door, knocks, guess the night guy doesn't hear him, then gets in his truck and ultimately ends up leaving. Story 7. Wasn't really that interesting, but it was funny crap. Was working at an electronics refurbisher right out of school and made friends with the security guard. We had a very portly supervisor who was crap at her job and treated her people like crap, so we didn't feel bad making fun of her. One day, this blimp of a woman slips on a rubber stopper of some sort on the floor and hits the ground. This mother ducker bounces, man. It was hilarious. Another time, we had an operator who was in charge of sorting computers after they were tested fixed into stacks of like models and cosmetic grades. This guy was Russian and never really spoke, but everyone said he knew enough English to be functional. His area was laid out in rows with multiple pallets in each row and a walking lane between rows. He had a bad habit of forcing his foot between pallets to cut through because he was too lazy to go around. He trips in front of me, and I politely told him that he needed to use the walking lane. Evidently, he didn't understand me, and so he intentionally trips himself again very openly and throws a computer onto the floor, gesturing at it like it happens all the time, and it wasn't his fault. He damaged this thing beyond repair, and I immediately went to the supervisor, Jim, and security because he destroyed property. My GM was such a crap hole that he said the camera footage pointing right over him wasn't conclusive and tried to blame me for not having an escort with me at all times, which was not expected of me at all. Story 8. Not a security camera exactly, but I worked at a school a while back that had screen capture software installed on all its computers. The rules were very strict at this particular school, and so kids were prohibited from playing games on any of the computers. This included computers in the library that students could use during break hours. However, kids being kids, they'd attempt to get away with playing games as frequently as they could. The library was a pretty good location for this, as it was quite large and wasn't physically monitored very well. One of my colleagues worked in the main IT room and had a dedicated screen for monitoring other computers from around the school. He would use the screen capture software to have an array of 10, 12 random screens from around the school displayed in small thumbnails, so he could see what the kids were doing. Anytime he saw something unusual, he would maximize the desired screen and check out what they were up to. I tended to visit him during lunch breaks as we were pretty good friends, so I saw him doing this quite often. Anyways, he had the amusing tendency to take control of kids' screens when they were playing games without them realizing. And while they were trying not to die and complete tricky puzzles, he would randomly move the mouse so they lost. This was made more amusing by him saying patronizing things like, "Are you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it? Oh, looks like you died." He'd do this so subtly that he could go on for 5 to 10 minutes without them realizing that it wasn't just their bad playing. The best part, though, is when they did eventually realize that it was him screwing with them. They'd close the window, open up Paint or Word, and write things like, "Damn you." He'd then print the screen, email it to their teacher, and they'd get detention. Good times. Story 9. I'm a vendor at Home Depot who recently had loss prevention talk to me about an incident of diarrhea on the floor. A woman couldn't make it to the bathroom, and we watched in horror as she waddled crap for about 25 feet. The worst part is, I walked in after the fact and thought someone had spilled a chili cheese dog on the floor. It sat there for about a half hour. People walked in it and pushed carts through as well. Singularly, the nastiest thing I've seen on CCTV. Story 10. My brother is a chef at a pub in a suburb that can get lively at times, Richmond. At night, the bar is closed and the staff go home, but there are usually guests in the rooms upstairs. One night, the alarm went off, and they rushed to the pub to find the front door smashed to smithereen. On checking the security footage, they see a drunk man walk up to the door with a massive rock. Apparently, it was comically large and much bigger than what you would need to break through a glass door. He throws the boulder at the door and it goes straight through. The man casually walks through the door, ignoring the alarms as he walks behind the bar and helps himself to a cider. He then walks around a bit before picking up a bottle of bourbon and causally stumbling away. The police later found him at the train station, passed out with the empty bottle of bourbon beside him. Nobody knows where the rock came from or how long he had been carrying it. Another fun fact is that the whole building is surrounded by cameras, but there's a small triangle that none of the cameras can see. If someone is trying to pick a fight and deserves it, the bouncers will stand in this invisible triangle and lightly provoke the a-hole to come over here and say that. Invariably they do, and the footage the police are given shows somebody trying to start a fight, pushing people around, threatening them. Then the troublemaker walks out of the field of view, and here we see camera 4 shows he has somehow acquired a bloody nose. Story 11. I work for a very large insurance company. I'm talking, they have multiple offices in multiple states. They also own a golf course and restaurant. Well, one day, and we got a call from the restaurant saying that it smells like poop in the hallway just outside of the restaurant. So we told the cleaning staff about it, and they started to clean it up. I figured I should look back on cameras in that area to see if I could see anything that would explain this. After about 10 minutes of searching, I found this gentleman, late 40s, early 50s, who was walking very oddly. I looked into it a little more and noticed his literal diarrhea coming out the bottom of his shorts onto the floor, all over his shoes and running down his legs. He walked the length of the hallway doing. Turns out, the guy went into the bathroom and tried to clean off his legs and shoes and was still sitting at the bar. He was asked to leave and indeed left. Story 12. I have a security system monitor, CAMS all over the church, mounted near the organ console in the choir loft so I can keep an eye on what's going on downstairs in the church while practicing during the week. The strangest thing I saw was some guy who came in the church with his dog and started drinking directly from the holy water font. Then he held the holy water dispenser button so the dog could drink from it too. I went downstairs and asked if he'd like to use the men's room instead. He said he wanted his dog to drink holy water to make him better behaved rather than to drink from the toilet. Story 13. I have a security camera at my desk. I work at a museum, and I have visuals of certain sections that the cameras point to. One section is of a replica of a native burial sacrifice circle. I usually tell guests the don't touch, don't eat or drink normal rules in a museum, Some of the things, though, are interactive and they indicate that you can touch or get in whatever it is. The circle is open and you can walk down the steps and get close to the mural and see the artifacts we have. But I guess it doesn't look as though you should or can. I get to watch people step inside the circle, look around, then jump out as if not to get caught. One chick busted her ass going up the stairs to jump out, and I started cracking up. I radioed one of the gallery guides to go over and help her, and then explained to her that it is interactive, and she can stop acting like a ninja, and that we have cameras, and I could see her. One time I saw a kid try to steal a Native American knife tool from a table that said, "Teaching objects, do not touch." I called it in, and a guide had to go tell him to take the knife out of his left pocket and return it to the table, and that he was asked to leave along with the bad spirits he released by taking the knife from its section. Museums have cameras, people. Chill out with the touchy-grabby crap. Story 14. Not a first-hand story, but amusing from my childhood. When I was young, a close family member used to work in a nondescript office tower located on a hill overlooking a large DC suburb. The tower itself was nothing fancy, but given the subcontracting work of its owner, had a wing dedicated to nationally secure work. As part of fulfilling national security requirements, it also had the best 80s. Technology had to offer in a spare, no-expense sense. In terms of external monitors and security, there was no guardhouse. However, only a security station inside the building, and the hill had a reputation as the most secluded spot in town. The suburb. So it was a popular impromptu lover's lane. This was great because no one in town could see vehicles in the parking lot. Not so great though, because even in the 80s, state-of-the-art, monitoring included quite capable imaging and thermal sensors on the roof of the building, full controllable by the security crew on duty. Weekend overnight shifts were never hard to fill for the security contractor, apparently, as the roof equipment easily rendered any activity in any car in the secluded lot in vivid detail for the guys in the camera room. Story 15. Former Disneyland cast member here. I have seen a lot of BJs on the Haunted Mansion, a few makeout sessions on Pirates of the Caribbean. But since the boats are bigger and are not private, we don't get a lot of hardcore shenanigans. I have never been to the main security room with all of the park cameras, but this is a story I heard on the radio when I was a kid, long before I worked in the park. Someone called into a morning radio show in Los Angeles, claiming to be a Disneyland security guard. He said that he once witnessed Jonathan Brandis and Soleil Moonfry having sex on the Skyway buckets. Story 16. I worked loss prevention, store security, for almost a decade, and I have stories. I once watched a truck pull into the parking lot in the pouring rain. Driver gets a BJ, passenger rolls down the window and spits. She gets out in the pouring rain, walks around, gets paid, and walks off. Woman comes in, walking down the aisle, starts shimmying her leg. Something falls out and onto the floor. It was poop. A man used to come in every day, buy a bunch of food, but would always steal a Danish. We called him Danish guy. He wouldn't steal it by eating it, which is typical, but would actually conceal it. In pockets, under armpits, down his pants. Anyway, he could. This woman, Sandra, I still remember her name, would come in all the time, grab random items off the shelf and scratch herself all over with it, then put it back. She was about 300 plus pounds and constantly sweating. Story 17. I have seen all manner of interesting things, mostly theft and fraud from customers and employees, but there are a few shiny standouts. Watched a woman play with her private area for 3 or so minutes in the store parking lot. She had on really short shorts and simply pushed the fabric aside and handled herself. Viewed the full-on destruction of a hurricane live. A few cars were flipped over by wind, doors were broken, glass was shattered, and unfortunately, some people were blown over but made it into the store safely. Other than that, a lot of fights, and again, mostly theft. People steal a great deal, much more than one may think. In my lifetime as loss prevention for a high-profile store chain, I've probably witnessed more than 5,000 different cases of people trying to take things that they haven't paid for. Story 18. I saw some guys basically TP a storage room while wearing some Halloween masks. That's about it. Nothing ever happens, and if it does, I'm usually on my phone/laptop anyway. Story 19. Used to work security. Besides the usual making out in elevators, it was this guy that thought his car could beat the garage gate that was already coming down. Was watching the camera for the garage gate and could see this happening a mile away. The garage gate timer was nearly up, and this guy in a black Audi sedan decides he can make it and speeds up. Garage gate comes down and cracks his windshield. Gate goes back up and he slowly backs up, and the gate comes down a second time and puts a second crack in his windshield. Comes over to the security office and tries to pin it on us. Building management and my security manager reviewed the footage and basically ignored his complaints because it was his own fault because there were big signs to slow down and come to a stop before the garage gate. Story 20. I used to work night shifts at a hotel in Florida. We had a swimming pool and a jacuzzi tub outside that closed at 10 p.m. After a few minutes later, all the lights turned off, except one next to the entrance leading to elevator. So it happens one of the cameras was mounted directly behind that one light that was switched on. In this situation, if you looked directly at the camera, you couldn't see it because of the overpowering light in front of it. Well, I think you're getting the point. Let's just say that I got plenty of private shows of countless women changing their wet bathing suit or drying themselves off right in front of that, you guessed it, one available light. After a while, I got used to it so much I just ignored it. Maybe only a few times I took a closer look at a particularly beautiful woman who just minutes before was kindly asking me if she could have her midnight swim. Story 21. It isn't my job to watch the cameras, but as a manager, I would look up anything threatening or hilarious. So one night, somewhere around 3 a.m. in the morning in the middle of winter, where it snows and dives into the negatives, Celsius frequently, an older gent, 60 plus, and a 20-something guy start arguing. This camera points straight at the door, with a door button to exit. It looks like they are going to come to blows, when the older guy strips off his jacket and shirt and starts doing push-ups. The younger guy follows, and we are now having a push-up competition. The older guy goes to one-armed, and he's ripped, so the younger guy gives up and, with a shake of the hand, leaves. Funniest thing was, you could barely see a hand in the background frantically hitting the door button while these two are going at it. Dude wanted out. Story 22. I used to work at a radio station that had a security camera pointed at the front door so you could see who was there from the studio. The camera was at the top of a 3-meter tall pole in the garden bed by the door. One morning, around 5, the camera started shaking like crazy. Then a face appeared briefly on the monitor, and then it went black. The three of us working at that time all ran to the front door and found a couple of skinny boys. One of them had climbed the pole and turned the camera to face the wall, while the other got busy trying to break into the newsreader's car. They ran off when we confronted them. I shrugged, used a broom to turn the camera back the right way, and went back to work. Story 23. I used to deliver pizza. The boss decided, after the second armed robbery, that there needed to be security cameras. The first thing he caught on footage was the employee that had been held at gunpoint a week prior. Close down the shop after hours, clean everything, count all the money and put it in the safe for morning deposit, then pull out a bottle of Jack and cry his heart out while shaking and hiding under counter. Story 24. Worked as in payroll office staff for casino back in college, really enjoyed the job. Did soft count, but even cooler, the security guys really liked me and taught me some tricks on the trade to watch for while on video surveillance. I got to watch 2 employees attempt to steal and soft count. This was after they were fired. I watched a drunk dude attempt to steal from the casino at the card tables with an empty, impressively constructed chip case. Looked like a stack of 3 to 4 chips, but would only leave a chip or 2 behind. The dealer didn't catch this, surprisingly. The video dudes did. Story 25. Not me, but I was friends with a guy that ran lead security at a casino here in the Midwest. When we'd go and he'd be working, he would always meet up with us and bring us to the back to see the best of the best security footage. Most of them were just super drunk people. Saw an old dude stumble onto the down escalator in an attempt to go up, and a lady flip when trying to get off the moving sidewalk. Also had one of a lady crafting right there in her paigo chair. I miss those times. Story 26. Used to work in a phone shop when the original iPhone was launched. They had working units set up for customers to try, but the original security tethers were plastic, and shoplifters realized if they just held onto it as they ran for the door, it would snap and they'd be gone by the time the alarm went off. We had a bunch of CCTV clips saved from the week immediately after the company quietly replaced the plastic tethers with retracting steel. Clip after clip of scummy little crap bags boomeranging back through the doorway and smashing face first into the display units. Story 27. A few years ago, my brother was a security guard in a hospital, and the most interesting thing, besides catching another guard stealing, was replaying himself trying to startle his partner and falling. Basically, he was pushing a cart and saw her, decided it would be funny to get a running start, and then lean on the cart, kind of like what you would do at the grocery store, and just roll up on her. He wound up falling off the cart after it hit something and he fell. They both thought it was so funny, so they watched it like 100 times in varying speeds, sometimes in reverse. Story 28. We saw a ghost. Okay, not really, but still spooky. Used to work security for a large tech company, which you all have heard of. One of the cameras that looks at the super secure compound has a problem that, when in low light situations, it creates some mild artifacting. This artifacting always appears at the same place, and it looks eerily like a person walking down the path. It appears, moves down the path towards the creepy-looking coolant tanks, then disappears. Story 29. No longer a security guard, but was once posted at a mall during the holiday season. Twice during my time there, and was watching the cameras I watched in 2 separate incidents of people having seizures. One was extremely minor, to the point where after we made sure she was okay, she said we were being over-dramatic when we rushed over and she continued shopping. The other time was a bit more intense since it was their first one ever and had to be rushed to the hospital and spent at least the night there, given that their husbands sought out permission to leave their vehicle at the mall for the night. Story 30. Watching security cam at work late at night. If I move the camera as far as I can right, it picks up a parking lot that is across the street. Bored as hell and cruising the camera, and then all of a sudden the park is raided by about 10 cop cars and unmarked cars. Guys started running out of the bushes all over the place. Apparently, it was a notorious gay cruising spot. They arrested about 8 guys and had them all lined up. They looked like older business-type guys. It was an exciting couple of hours for sure. Story 31. I used to ride a scooter to work, just a small one. I wasn't permitted to ride it in the actual building, though. One night I did anyway. It was like 8 p.m. on a Friday, and nobody was around, and it was like 20 meters or so to the door. The next day, my boss walked up to me with a printout of a screenshot the security people had sent me of me mid-scoot on that Friday night. Breeze in my hair and giddy smile on my face is still one of the most amazing pictures of me. I should scan it. Story 32. I was working the graveyard shift at police dispatch. This giant man comes in, dressed in leather, and asks to see Sarah Connor. I said, she's not receiving visitors now and he should come back later. He mumbles, I'll be back. So I figure, whatever, bro. 10 seconds later, dude smashes through the entrance in a truck. He drove through the ducking wall. That's all I remember. Story 33. Witnessed a homeless dude getting a BJ. Had to send somebody else out there. Break it up before it escalated. Dirty deeds, my friends. Story 34. So I don't watch security cameras, but I did something particularly interesting. I was going up an elevator in Barnes & Noble and realized that it had a security camera. So I, in my head, decided that if I began to furiously slap me and wave at the camera. The security officer. Story 35. Once upon a time, I was a security guard at an office building in Portsmouth, NH Newer, the hospital. The weirdest and most outrageous at the same time was when someone opened a locked door at the bottom of a staircase near the loading docks area and had sex in front of a stationary camera. I decided not to interrupt them and had trouble not laughing when they realized they were locked out of the building and had to do the walk of shame around the building to the front entrance and had to be signed in because they forgot their pass cards. Story 36. One day there was a couple walking into the store, and the gentleman saw a blueberry on the floor, did a double take and stepped over it. His wife didn't. Slipped on the blueberry and went flying. We don't even sell fruit, it's a department store. Story 37. I work at a dive bar with a Mrs. Pac-Man machine. A few weeks ago there was a puddle of piss right under the machine. We were baffled until we looked at the security cameras. One camera was perfectly trained on the machine. A rather drunk fellow must have had an intense game going because he proceeds to whip out his junk and pee straight down. You can see the puddle form perfectly at his feet. I don't know how he managed to keep his focus, honestly. He better have gotten a top 10 score. Story 38. I work security for a museum, and there are some pretty interesting things we see. One time a lady that was completely naked ran around the building and up the street. No idea what that was about. In terms of odd, I guess we've just picked up strange shady figures in our cameras that are in one of the exhibits. Around 2 in the morning, just some shadows. Don't really know how to explain that, but whatever. Story 39, security guard here. Most interesting thing I saw was a homeless guy getting beat up by the police. From the body language, the homeless guy was taunting the police. So the officers started kneeing him to the floor and kicked him a few times as his fellow officers watched. After a while, the office pulled him back and they hopped in their police van and left. I don't think the cops were expecting to be on camera. Story 40. I don't watch security cameras for a living, but I am pretty close with the security department at the hospital I work at. A couple weeks ago, one of the officers showed me a video of a psych patient getting a shot from one of the nurses. He then snatched the needle from her and hit with it repeatedly. Story 41. Worked security in a large downtown area and saw people having sex in the skywalk while other people walked by. The person I had relieved hadn't been paying attention, and I found it when I was looking for something else. Watched previous footage of lady give a guy a BJ in a van during the evening rush hour. We'd save good video for our coworkers to see. And there was always the group of bridesmaids that loved to flash the camera. Story 42. I work at a mall. I've seen lots of sex inside cars, inside the elevator. I caught a guy watching adult film on his phone sitting in a massage chair. The dude worked for the mall, so telling his boss was awkward. Some of the inside cameras have good reads, so I can read people's texts sometimes. Story 43. Inside an elevator, I saw a rather large, probably 350 blonde syllabus woman who grabbed a small guy who was probably 140 slums by the throat and hit him. She held him there and slapped him a few times across the face with her other hand. Then, she kissed him hard. They returned to normal as the doors opened and acted like nothing happened. Story 44. Various fights and stuff that happen every couple months. But surprisingly, it's rare that really weird stuff happens. Our residents have clusters of en-suite rooms with a shared living room and kitchen. Have had a guy who would come out at about 1 a.m. into the cluster in nothing but underwear, stand and face the TV, and start doing a series of random exercise stretches. TV on or off, then just go back into his room. Story 45. I don't do it for a living, but I have them in my house. The most interesting thing we've ever seen on it was a mouse, and using the footage, found out where he'd come into the house and when and where exactly he was. Chased him back outside. He got lucky. Story 46. I work in a hotel and am often called to cover night's reception, security, and one night after refusing entry to someone one clearly hit his tits, he proceeded to sit of a low fence marking the perimeter for 10 minutes. He then pulled his pant down and took a crap, pulled up his pants and walked away like nothing happened. Story 47. Not me, but my aunt worked at a retail store, and the security cameras caught a woman pleasure. They could clearly see her O-face on camera, and when she was done, she just gone. Story 48. I watched a woman who looked to be in her early 20s with skinny jeans and a tank top take her dog out to go potty. Nothing special. The dog does its business, and to my surprise, the girl then undid her pants and went number 2, right next to where the dog went. She put her pants on, no wipe, and walked back in like nothing. Story 49. Wouldn't say interesting, more stupid and funny. 2 cars managed to reverse directly into each other with a fair amount of force when they were originally parked on opposite sides of a pretty empty car park, and it was a one-way road. So one car was reversing to then go forward in the wrong direction. Guy in the wrong car proceeds to get out and go nuts. Story 50. Some guy was mugging another person in the middle of the day, and then another Randy breaks it up and sits the guy down and has a good talking to with him before asking him to leave. Dude didn't come back for another month when we gave him a 2-year ban. Story 51. Don't watch them for a living, but do work in retail. My manager called me into the office once when it was raining heavily to show me a family who'd made themselves waterproof outfits, including hats, out of bin bags. There were about 5 of them. We couldn't stop laughing. Story 52. Watched a dude hop the railing on a 2nd level deck from an apartment down to the community pool area, i.e. concrete. Then proceed to get a probably 1.5 wide clay planter filled with dirt dropped on his back after he landed. Story 53. I work as security in a hotel with bars on site, mostly just naked people who get locked out of their room. But there will be the occasional duck session in front of a camera. Story 54. Not one of mine, but kind of funny. A thief pickpockets a guy, and just as he's about to make off with his wallet, notices the security camera capturing the whole thing. So he tosses it on the ground behind the victim, taps him on the shoulder, and tells him he dropped his wallet. Story 55. I definitely don't watch cameras for a living, but I work at a school, so we all have access to the cameras. Recently, one of our staff members was imitating a teacher's dance moves and ended up looking like he was seizing. Maybe we all need to get out more or so, but it is hilarious. Story 56. There once was man called Mad Crapper. His name is a clue to his caper. He took a poo and didn't care who was watching through a security camera and saw him pooping in public. Twice. Story 57. Worked security for a building parking lot for a bit. The most interesting was a time I looked 2 guys were trying to break into a car. They were. As it turns out, it was their car, and they locked their keys in. Not much happened at that place. Story 58. Had a taxi cab come over the curb and sidewalk and go right through the window of the restaurant I worked at during brunch service. Hit a booth with a lady in it and sent her spinning across the dining room. All of us watched on the surveillance. Story 59. As I type this, I'm looking in the screens right now. The creepiest thing I saw was a spider crawl across the lens. Keep in mind that the camera was in low light mode, so it's very grainy black and white. So it was pretty unsettling. Story 60. I'm a surveillance investigator at a raceway casino. The best part of the job is just how many people think they're being smooth or beating the cameras when in reality they aren't. The information we have access to is pretty insane. We know everything that's going on. Story 61. I work for a medical education center. The security guy has seen 10 hilarious minutes of a man with both arms in casts awkwardly trying to steal from the cafe cash register. Also a doctor assaulting a staff member, which was slightly less funny. Story 62. We just recently installed security cameras outside my house, and the most interesting things I've seen so far are a squirrel coming into the front porch and hiding his food in the potted flower, and a garbage picker spending 15 minutes going through our garbage. Story 63. I didn't catch it live, but someone showed me a security video of a rather disliked coworker dancing through the hall on her way to deliver some arduous paperwork that no one likes to do. The coworker and I thought it was hilarious.